What's up everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we're continuing with the comedy breakdown and reviews for The Last of Us with episode 3 entitled Long Long Time. Let's jump right in, and that means spoilers ahead. We pick up with Joel picking stones out of a stream to try and play a game of Jenga, because it was Tess's favorite. Ellie has been practicing looking homeless, and she's getting really good at it. Joel tosses Ellie a Big Mac before they have a staring contest, and Joel won't back down. Joel stops by a gas station in search of Twinkies. He reuses his joke from the last episode, but it's gotten stale.
Is there anything bad in here?
Just you.
Getting funnier.
Ellie finds a door that says Epstein Holding Company, open if you are under 16. She sees a trash can down below and immediately decides she wants to be with her people and jumps down, because she's trash. While down there, she finds some much needed tamps and Epstein himself trapped under some rubble. She stabs him in the face, proving that Epstein didn't kill himself. Seeing that Ellie is going to be in need of tamps, Joel is preparing to protect himself. Joel tells Ellie that the Cordyceps mutated and ended up in the flower supply, causing the massive rapid outbreak. They see a pit of bones, and Joel tells Ellie that's where he's left all of his previous nagging, unwanted teenage companions. We flash back to 2003, 4 days after the outbreak, where a mother is inspecting the baby she just bought. We meet the backside of Bill as he evades a federal patrol and lets out his inner libertarian.
Not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks.
He runs outside after he thought he heard some IRS agents. Bill starts to build himself a little kingdom and sets up traps for any other government employees who come knocking. While having a nice meal, he turns on the newest episode of I'm a Zombie, Get Me Out of Here. 4 years later, he notices one of his traps has been sprung, so he goes out to annihilate the infected. But what he finds is even worse, a guy from Baltimore. Bill tosses down a ladder and says, "Come up here so I can beat you with my bare hands." He tells the man that Loser Town is that way. The two straight men stare at each other with no sexual tension at all as they discuss Arby's. Straight Bill comes to drop off clothes for Straight Frank, who's in the shower, yelling about how he dropped the soap and Bill should come help him get it, because that's what friends do. Before they sit down to dinner, Bill bursts into the room like Kramer because he was a big fan of Seinfeld and he thought it would be funny. Frank jumps on the piano and starts to play one of the classics, Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. Bill grabs his tits for confidence and one-ups Frank by playing Gangster's Paradise. Frank realizes Bill must be really straight after he hears how good he is at the piano. They compare beards really close together and see how far they can get their faces into each other's face while bumping dicks down below in a completely heterosexual manner. Frank orders Bill to go take a shower and clean his holes. Frank does Bill a favor by conducting a heterosexual penis inspection. Then he massages Bill's breast, checking for lumps, because he's just that good a friend. We jump ahead 3 years where the two completely straight friends are fighting. Frank wants to invite more friends into their lives, but their friends end up being Joel and Tess, and Bill realizes making this nice meal was a total waste. Joel warns Bill that eventually raiders will come to his little kingdom. Moving ahead another 3 years, Frank is fat-shaming Bill, but he leads him over to where the fresh Gayberries are ready to pick. The Gayberries take immediate effect, and now they're suddenly gay for the first time. A construction crew finally makes it to their job site 10 years later, but that's government jobs for you. Incensed at the sight of government workers, Bill massacres them, but takes a bullet right in the donut. Frank tries to treat the wound, but wants to get drunk first. Then he decides to try and take a shot out of the bullet hole. We jump ahead another 10 years to around the present day, where Frank's become a lazy son of a bitch who makes Bill push him around. Frank may have AIDS, but at least it's not mushroom COVID. Bill makes a crass joke about plowing Frank so good that he needs a wheelchair now. Frank's also gotten into drugs, casually popping some uppers at dinner. He gets wasted and Bill has to put him to bed. Frank says he's tired of being treated different because of his chair.
Looking at me in my chair!
And he's gonna kill himself. He wants a good last day, so he's going to marry Bill and he's going to fucking party.
Then you will crush all of these up, put them in my wine. I will drink it.
Could you guys move? I'm trying to fucking party here.
He has a creepy request about dying in Bill's arms, which kinda seems like a raw deal for Bill.
Do you love me?
Yes. Then love me the way I want you to.
The two dress up and shoot a Men's Wearhouse commercial. They cheers to assisted suicide, and Bill pours in the murder pills before switching the glasses around real fast in a perverse game of Russian roulette. But it turns out both glasses were suicide spiked, and Bill's checking out tonight as well. Bill has to push Frank's ass even to his own death. So selfish. And Bill rolls him out to the dumpster. Joel and Ellie show up to the house. Joel goes searching for Bill and Frank, and Ellie notices that the men have been partying. She finds a letter stating that both men are dead and have left behind a truck key. Reading the letter aloud, Ellie pauses when she comes across the N-word, unsure what to do.
I leave you all of my weapons and equipment. Use them to keep...
Joel doesn't have any lead on where to take Ellie now, and decides to take her with him to his brother Tommy in Wyoming. Ellie tells Joel that Tess was kind of a bitch.
Rule 1, you don't bring up Tess, ever.
Then Ellie finds a gat and tucks it away in case any fools don't be stepping to her right. Joel tosses her deodorant in a not-so-subtle hint. They hop in their new ride and hit the road, and the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. But this episode falls more in the debate watch category in the middle for one big reason. Why should the audience care about any of this? Sure, it adds more color and depth to the world we're seeing on screen, showing how some people eked out a living after the outbreak and their interpersonal struggles along the way. And its own self-contained story was artfully and at times beautifully done. But with both characters dead and playing no further part in Joel and Ellie's journey, why do we need to spend a long, slow hour learning about them? It was a well-told but unnecessarily long deviation from the show's story. So it wasn't a terrible thing to watch, but it just wasn't all that meaningful to our protagonist's journey. If you didn't play the game and didn't know Bill and Frank before this episode, I have to wonder about how much you'd care about all this. At least it may mean that the show is going to take longer in telling the story of the first game, possibly pushing the game's final events into the next season. And if the show continues to be good like it was in the first 2 episodes, then by all means drag the story out as long as you'd like. But let's hope they don't continue to stray too far from the main storyline in the coming episodes. Now, the elephant in the room is 2 men kissing. I mean, it's the changes to Bill and Frank from the first game. You meet Bill fairly early on in the game, and he's alive and alone. He's still a crazy survivalist who's got traps set up everywhere, so that's the same. But Frank is long gone at that point. While with Bill, you find that Frank has hung himself and has left a note behind for Bill basically saying, "I never loved you, eat shit and die." So while they were together at some point before that in the game, we don't know much of anything about their relationship, and it certainly wasn't some beautiful romance as it was shown here. I think it's probably an improvement in terms of just being a more interesting story to watch, but it also removes any reason to care about these 2 characters past this episode. And man, they assassinated Frank's character. I mean, does this even look like the same person to you? The Frank in this show is walking around and wheeling around and talking. He doesn't swing around from the ceiling at all like his video game counterpart did, and this change to his character is just unacceptable to fans of the game. Jokes aside, I think they missed a great opportunity to bring a bit more stakes to this episode. If I had written it, I would have had it so Bill gets sick from the suicide pills and his body throws them up against his will. Then he's forced to watch Frank die and is left alone and even more bitter in this dark world without his one and only love. Then Joel and Ellie meet Bill as a broken man, who at first refuses to aid them, but eventually finds purpose in helping them on their journey. I think it would have tied into the story better, would have been a bit more faithful to the game, and would have made this episode even more gut-wrenching than it already was, and more impactful to the main story. The start of Bill and Frank's relationship in this episode is a little off-putting, but maybe that's just me. It comes across a little forceful, and almost feels like Frank might only be doing this in exchange for warm meals and a roof over his head. And maybe that's what the creators were going for, who knows. But their relationship years later was shown to be better and more authentic. Outside of Bill and Frank's story, there wasn't much more to this episode. We got a bit more development to the relationship between Ellie and Joel, and it looks like it'll be a slow burn watching them grow closer. But it should be worth it. Lastly, much of the dialogue from the scene where Ellie brings up Tess was taken right out of the game, culminating in Ellie telling Joel, "What you say goes."
What you say goes.
That paired with her donning the same shirt from the game was a really nice touch and a good nod to the original story. All in all, it was a good episode for what it was, but it just doesn't do much to progress the main story here. Let us know in the comments. What did you think of this one? Did you think this episode was too slow and too unrelated to the main story? Remember to like the video and click the subscribe button down below to stay up to date on the first season of The Last of Us. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.